everybody. Welcome back to the Skookum Report. Tonight is part 2 of our interview with Mr. Rick Cox. I hope you all enjoy it. We're just going to jump right into it. Here we go.
And if you like the intellectual curiosity, and that's what I tell I have a son that's 7, almost 18, that I have issues with him wanting to go out and hiking at night in areas that I don't like him going. And I tell him, I said, son, you need to develop this intellectual curiosity, and you need to develop this sixth sense. And I alluded to that with you the other day. Since I had that encounter that time, now remember, I grew up in the woods in the Appalachian foothills, and then I paid attention to things that went on because my dad would always say, okay, don't ever step over a log without looking under it first. Could be a copperhead there. Mm-hmm. You know, don't lean if you see a rotten tree, don't just lean up against it because it could be a scorpion or, but just look first. And, but since I had that encounter, it's like somebody took a match and lit this fuse of another sense in me that's made me paranoid. And when I'm out in the woods, when I would go on hikes, I've even had people say, what's wrong with you? Or, you're so, it's like you're focused on this. I said, I'm just, when I'm out in the woods, I'm paying attention to blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're on alert.
Yeah, I can't help it. I cannot help it. Mm-hmm. And a few times since that, I have been places where, I felt something, and then I realized there was no sounds of nature around me, and it's only been like maybe 3 or 4 times. But let me tell you, you hear people say when everything goes quiet, let me testify under oath before God and everybody else right now on your show. If you are out in the woods and you've noticed birds chirping and insects, and even things rustling like little squirrels or rabbits, and then within a few minutes that all goes away, let me tell you, brother, that will freak you out. Mm-hmm. If you know what to look for. If you're totally and completely oblivious to your surroundings and you don't know what you're into, you may not pay attention to it.
Right.
And that's what worries me about people that go out hiking in these places that don't have that appreciation for an event like that going on, because they're placing themselves in danger.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
And that silence, I've heard people refer to it as the silence was deafening.
Yes. Yes.
That it just was such a change, an abrupt change that they couldn't help but notice it.
Yeah. And then before I forget to tell you about my game warden friend, once he retired, he did tell me a couple of things. He did tell me a little more about some sightings, and so you and I talked the other day about these quote big black dog and big black bear sightings, and there's no written handbook or policy manual that says what that means. But let me tell you, that is either code for a Bigfoot sighting or a dogman sighting.
Yeah. Isn't the cow Bigfoot?
Yeah, and the big black dog.
Big black dog.
And
dogman.
And I'll tell you about my buddy who moved back when the development was first going on near this big national park. One side of the road was the park, the other side was wilderness that they were turning into a subdivision. He talks about, to this day, for several years, deer would congregate in the cul-de-sac a couple houses down from him. And he called me one time and said, I saw a wolf. And I said, you did not see a wolf. And he said, well, it was either that or it was the biggest damn German Shepherd that ever lived. And I said, well, there's been stories about German Shepherds and coyotes breeding and having some offspring that were unusual looking, And I've never seen a dog man, and I pray to God I never do.
Oh yeah, me neither. I do not.
Yeah. But at my age, I'm 63, and I got to have a couple of hip replacements. I just don't know what I would do. And I am well armed. I'm as about as people on my street.
Mm-hmm.
They say if it hits the fan, we're coming to your house.
Right.
And I'm that prepared when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm no prepper. I'm no survivalist. I'm just an average guy, And
I know exactly what you mean. Like,
yeah,
my brother, my little brother would be.
Oh yeah, you told me about that. Yeah. Well, look, people in my area, they're it's just like people that grew up in Manhattan, they're into this and that. Well, people that grow up in the South, they're into this and that.
Yeah.
And it's just a different lifestyle. But I'll get back to going up to the museum. When I met Scott Carpenter, we hit off like two long lost relatives or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about a lot of stuff, and I bought his book, and he is a believer in if you go back to the book of Enoch and lost book to the Bible. And by the way, it's not actually correct to refer to Enoch as a lost book of the Bible or a banned book. Before the Council of Nicaea in 325 A.D., when Emperor Constantine wanted one religion and one Bible, you had a lot of these books, Jasher, Jubilees, they were actually canonized books in a lot of the different cultures. And to this day, Enoch is still in the Ethiopian Bible. Mm-hmm. And I have both read and listened to the taped versions of that book. And
that's
when
a real interesting book.
Okay. In the Qumran Dead Sea Scrolls, they found excerpts of books that predated what we already had. They found excerpts of Enoch, Jasher, and even the Book of Giants.
Yeah, the Old Testament sometimes, in a verse here and there, you'll find that it'll refer to one of those books.
Exactly.
And people are like, well, what is that book?
And as I was telling you the other day, Strong's Bible Concordance. Since I found out about that, what that will do is if you go back, I don't know if you remember, there was a time that people thou shalt not kill, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Well, I always knew there had to be some catch to that. Okay, thou shalt not kill is not what we
murder.
Greek is matos or malice murder, and I forget the Hebrew word, but there's a difference between like a police officer killing someone to protect himself or people, or a soldier in war. Exactly. That is not the same type of premeditated malice murder.
Right.
So you have that concordance. And you can look up a word, and sometimes it'll even give you a time period and a context and a historical status for when those books are used, or when those words, by the way, are used. And it can change things. So that's just
the
like
original Hebrew and the original Greek.
Exactly.
Some of those words had 10 different meanings. And we discussed that the other day. The Strong's Concordance is an awesome book to have, especially if you want to study the Bible, not just read through it. And
by the way, people that think Lucifer and Satan are the same person, that's academic when you get into those studies of the Old Testament, because Isaiah refers to Lucifer, son of the morning, you fell from heaven, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Jesus, he saw Lucifer fell from heaven like lightning.
Yeah.
Well, son of the morning, if you look at that word up, morning, that refers to an ancient deity back in the time of the Old Testament. It would have been like between the Sumerian and Old Testament times. So, I'm not trying to be seditious. I'm not trying to be an anarchist, and I'm not, trying to be a heretic.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from.
But I have a curiosity about these things.
Yeah, me
that
too.
I wish the average person would just not take what they're told and just say, well, no, I might want to look that up somewhere and see if there's another opinion on that. And but
a lot of people misquote the Bible, and they'll say, money is the root of all evil, and that's not the case at all. It talks about the love of money and greed, and you can do a lot of good with money. And there's a lot of other verses that are just some of the most.
But if you look at Genesis 6, where it says there were giants in those days, they were in the earth and afterwards. Okay, well, apparently God didn't get them all. Then you go over to Samuel and Kings, and then and I've done a lot of comparative studies, and I in no way am I trying to insult anyone that's a Muslim. I have friends who are sound Muslim believers. But I'll hear people say, well, Islam and the Bible, they're both full of violence, blah, blah, blah. I've studied Islam some, but I do know about the Bible that one of the reasons that God commanded people to go over into Canaan and kill all the giants is because they were Nephilim. There were corruptions of the bloodline. And, that's, and you got to wonder how much of that is remaining these days. And then the cynocephaly, the dogmen that even Catholic saints supposedly witnessed to try to get them into the fold. If you look at the pictures of them, they're the size of a man, dressed in man. There's pictures of them smoking a pipe, fishing.
Yeah.
And that is something. So has our government gotten into genetic experiments, which is an abomination that God forbid, and have they turned out giant creatures trying to make war machines or whatever? I mean, God forbid.
I have no doubt. It's just my opinion, but I have no doubt the government's done and is up to things that nobody has any idea about.
Well, I know I don't trust our government.
Right.
I did not trust it before this past election. I do not trust it after this election, and I will not trust it in the future.
Right.
And
I'm right there with you on that. Yeah.
If anybody wants to contact me about my Judeo-Christian and political beliefs, they're quite welcome to do so. But it's like I didn't even tell you this the other day. I'm one of those few white people who've actually been a victim of white supremacist violence back when, both as a kid and a teenager, because we had friends that were, in the South, you had a certain group of people here, and well, if you had friends that were black or whatever, and there were like a small little handful of people that, so I've had to run that gamut with both sides too, trying to defend my position on that, but I will stand to the day I die, believing that there are things that we do not know that will be revealed, and things that might be revealed to us now if we knew where to go get it and where to study for it. But all I can recommend is saying that if you get outdoors now, be careful where you go. Keep sight of this. This is like when I'm out with my son and his friends. There's a concrete rule. Do not lose sight of the people in front of you and behind you.
Behind you.
Yeah, because things can happen. And so I'm one more thing. I do have a former Army. We talked about the land between the lakes.
Yeah.
I do have an Army aviator friend, and he did not see it, and he wasn't there, but he passed the story on to me. Supposedly, there was an aviator. When we say aviator, it means a pilot. That was there who, when they let down a cargo net to pick up some kind of creature that was at the bottom of a ravine, and this would have been sometime in the 80s. And there's these stories about the dog men there, and there's two different scenarios of one of a family and one of a bow hunter.
Yeah.
And And then the one that a lot of people don't know, and I mentioned it a little bit for you the other night, and I just probably like maybe the climax of my stories. I was in the Army, and I was in aviation. I was learning to fly in '85, and there was a Cobra helicopter that crashed in the mountains of Georgia near a ranger camp. As a matter of fact, it wasn't far from North Georgia College, which now North Georgia Military University.
Okay.
And it was a two-seat Cobra. You had a pilot and a weapons specialist, front and rear.
Mm-hmm.
It crashed. It burned some, and they had to send the MPs for the base up there. There was 5 or 6 of them, and when they got up there, they said, the fire had burned out, but the pilots were partially charred, and it was up in this thick wooded area up in the mountains of North Georgia. And so they were sending in the crash investigator people from Fort Rucker, which is where the Army's aviation center is, and they wouldn't be there till the following day. So the MPs could put up their tent, build a fire. At about 2 a.m., one of them standing guard starts hearing this clanking sound around the wreckage, which is about 60 feet from them. And he wakes up a buddy, and they start running down there. And he described it as seeing 2 large, hairy creatures trying to make off with the bodies of the pilots. And so they opened up the M16s on them. And this was a troubling story when I first heard it, because I'd actually heard about the crash. Because when I heard the other part of it, it's like, oh my God, that's like 20 miles from where I grew up and where all this stuff happened for me, And so people that say that they're gentle force giants, maybe some of them are. Maybe some of them are just like the Simpsons. They just want to sit around and whatever. But there's too many stories, Native American stories, other stories of them being violent as hell.
Yeah, it could go either way.
Yeah. So I, for one, I'm not gonna be one of these peace and love guys that goes out here and I've got stuff that can bring down a Kodiak bear, and I don't go out, as my dad used to say, I don't go out to hurt or be hurt. I just want to come back in one piece. Yeah, that's the way I look at the woods these days, and I look at nature. I want to.
Good way to put it.
I want to enjoy it. I don't want anybody or anything messing with me. But, if these things are so territorial and they have their own territory and you don't know when you're stepping into the wrong place, well, how the heck when you've overstepped your boundaries?
Right.
Because they're the ones that set the boundaries, and you have no idea what they are.
Yeah, I've heard that, based on all that I've heard and read, dogmen are quite confrontational and violent. And then the Sasquatch, it can go either way. Like, they're just curious. I've heard kind, good stories of them saving people in car accidents and all kinds of things.
Yes.
And just, there's good ones and bad ones. I've heard people they put it like this, that they're just like people, as in you got your good ones and you got your bad ones. And your smart ones and your not so bright ones.
Yeah, Scott Carpenter says that they are very, very genetically diverse. He says there's also the issue of inbreeding, and we know what happens with inbreeding of people in the Appalachians. We've seen it. We've seen the pictures of it. It's not pretty, and it causes a lot of psychological and mental and emotional issues. And look, I'm from here, and I don't hide from that. It is what it is. And what I can tell you is that if these creatures have interbred with other animals, if they've interbred with humans, if they've interbred with their own family units, then it stands to reason that they could have some tendencies, some genetic tendencies in them to make them, emotional, unstable, or violent.
Right.
So, but anyway, I guess that's about
DNA. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess that's about all I've got if you want to shoot anything at me. But, yeah, the DNA
I've
being
heard that
tied to us.
I'm sorry?
DNA being 99, like the maternal DNA is human, but the paternal is unidentifiable.
Right. And that's just something. But, I mean, you're not going to get anybody from the government or any agency to, make a sworn statement. But, even I've heard that some people send stuff off to get tested, and then it just mysteriously gets lost.
Exactly.
Never hear back. And just
I heard many too. Melba Ketchum, she went through hell. She went through hell with all that, and they ruined her reputation.
Yeah.
And we'll never know, quite exactly how close to correct she was, because they distorted the truth with her so much.
Yeah.
And she wasn't a kook. Yeah, she was no kook. She was just an average person. So she just said, this is what I've discovered. This is what my theory is, and blah blah blah. And the thing that I think that goes unrecognized a lot of times, and that maybe the government or skeptics or whatever try to really play it up, is they want to make it like we are a bunch of inbred kooks.
Right.
We're not. There have been doctors, lawyers, engineers, NASA engineers on fishing trips. Kumbo Baker, he's a NASA scientist. He's from Mississippi, and he's one of your foremost experts on these sort of things. And it's just, there's so many mysteries that probably will not be unfolded till after we're all on the other side. And it's just incredible.
I wonder how sometimes, like say Dr. Jeff Meldrum, how most scientists and people in that field, they won't touch this subject with a 10-foot pole, but he's all about it. And I wonder how he's accepted generally in his field now.
His specialty, if you look at his specialty, it's he is into the footprints in the track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so therefore, and he's the one that actually first proposed this mid-tarsal break, where like a mid joint in the foot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's basically and that would explain this interesting way that the footprint is kind of like, okay, I have an interesting foot. I have an 11 triple E foot, but the problem with my foot is my heel is a normal E, but the front of my foot is a triple. So I get what's called heel flop. Okay, it's like we joke about me having a foot like a Bigfoot, a narrower heel, as opposed to a much wider, up at the front where the toes are. Mm-hmm. And he has alluded to that, saying that's now whether that's a troglodytean, Neanderthal, blah blah blah, whatever trait, who knows? But he has talked about the proportion of the foot. It's not the proportion of the foot, even though it looks human. The human foot is much narrower.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to just tell you, if anybody wants to ask me any questions, or if you want to have another session and question and answer, or whatever, I'm happy to do it. However you want to do it there, Bob. That's all right with me.
If anybody has any questions for Rick or anything, you can contact me on the Skookum Report, or you can leave a message, or you can email me at skookumreport@gmail.com. And, if anybody has any questions, I can write them all down, and we can do another show, like a question and answer show.
I've had people ask me some of the most interesting questions that I would have never thought that they would have asked. And usually it's things that to me is just like, well, you know, I took it for granted that people would know that. But if somebody grew up in a big city, it's like I told you.
Oh, yeah.
My wife does not want to hear anything about this. She is not sympathetic at all to it. She's a big city girl, and she's embarrassed by the fact, you know. And my son and I have gone up to the museum, and he's kind of open-minded to it, and especially after he's talked to some people up there that have seen some things. But the raw numbers of the tens of thousands of people that have seen stuff, when you sit into there's nothing like it. And I invite you or your followers, your subscribers, if you ever get a chance to go to a lecture, symposium, convention, gathering, whatever, where you are in a room of 100, 200, 300 people, and maybe, you know, one out of every 4 or 5 has had an encounter.
Right.
It's eye-opening, because I've been to them where the guy who says, okay, everybody in here that's either seen one or had an encounter or something, you know, stand up, raise your hand, whatever, and then people start doing that, and you would be surprised. And I mean, it's everything from doctors, lawyers, engineers, you know, people who the number of law enforcement. You know, I used to get these calls out in the very, very remote areas, and about, you know, prowlers at night and everything. And of course, I already was paranoid because, you know, especially this one area that because of what I'd been through. And there was like, you know, the motion lights will come on, and I'll turn all the floodlights on, and I never see anything, and then I turn them off, and then I hear it again, and it was usually, it was probably a bear or a pack of dogs or, you know, coyotes or something like that. But I think most of us know there's a chance that it might just have been something else.
Yeah. Well, there's another thing that just, I can't quite put my finger on. There's, you know, you hear all the stories about these tracks that they follow these tracks for a mile or so, and then all of a sudden, just in the middle of the field, they disappear. The tracks are gone. There's no right or left or you know, hopping off this way or that way. They just disappear. And, you know, like Ron Moorhead talking about them in the Sierras where, you know, people say, well, you heard them so close and you were able to tape them. Why couldn't you see them? He said it's almost like they just vanish. They're gone. Like so fast. Well, it's so curious.
Think about, I'll leave you with this one thought. You know, we talked about the sons of God, the watchers that came down and tampered with, you know, had sex with women, and they had giants, and, you know, they also tampered with other things. It's either Samuel or Kings, where when the children of Israel, they sent 10 spies over there. They said that they hid inside, I believe it was an apricot. We hid inside an apricot that fell, and we were like grasshoppers to the giants that were there. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. Okay, so if they did that to fruit,
oh my God,
and plant, what else did they do it with? And did they actually?
That's a really good point.
Did they actually have sex with animals, or were some kind of artificial insemination that was done, like it's done in modern day? You know, when you start thinking about this, you could just get the biggest headache that you've ever thought about. Just trying to, you know, categorize it, compartmentalize it, and all that sort of thing.
Like I said to you the other day, the more I learn about this subject, and the more I read, and the more I watch and listen, the more and more I realize I barely know anything about Bigfoot or Dogman or anything that's really even going on. It's like it opens up a Pandora's box of just, holy cow, what I get myself into here. I thought I was just reading about this, just a North American ape in the woods that people see every once in a while. And then you got all these stories, and some of them from very credible people that would otherwise just be dismissed because it sounds just crazy. But, the more you hear and the more you learn, the not so far-fetched it seems, just some of this stuff. But you got to be careful who you talk to also, or you're going to get made fun of, because not everybody has seen what you've seen or read what you've read or listened to what you've listened to form the opinions that you have, Some people.
Well, you've heard about or read about the Wood Booger Conservancy that's in Alabama and a couple other states. I think it's called the North American Wood Booger.
I don't think not the Conservancy. Or
they are a group unto themselves that are not even affiliated with the BFRO.
Okay.
I think it's called the Wood Booger Conservancy, and it started in northern Alabama. Yeah, look at that one, because even though very few of them have had sightings, they have all kinds of interactions that are actually fascinating, and you can look at some of their on YouTube also. But
it's called the Wood Booger Conservancy.
Wood Booger, and that's what I grew up. It was Wood Booger. It was a booger, and it was in the woods. And
that's a southern thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's very southern, yeah. But I've got Cherokee Indian in me, and I have a great grandmother that was Cherokee, and most of us here that are from here, we have that in us. With Scott Irish people who grew up in the really, really hard Appalachian mountain areas, and they either lived close to or intermingled or intermarried with the Cherokee. And so we, the Cherokee will have different names for what we'll, what is it? Is the Cherokee Anayiwaye or something like that? I think it's Anayiwaye. I'll have to make sure I'm saying it.
Sure. There's so many.
That's the name. The name for. Yeah, that's the name for this thing. I think it's Anayiwaye.
Okay.
And
I know that every tribe has a different name for Bigfoot.
And if somebody in your audience is more studied or Cherokee than me, and please correct me on that. But I do know that I do know a few words in Cherokee from when my son was in scouting, and when I had a few family members that remembered a few things growing up. We're an interesting hodgepodge. You had people with, my older relatives that had the actual Scott Irish accent, and then have a few Cherokee idioms thrown in there, and it was family reunions were big and were spectacles.
That's cool. That's cool though.
So, but listen, Bob, whatever you need to do, if you want to do another round, or if you want to have a call in or take questions, hey, I'm available, because listen, I spent most of my life having to hide from this, and whether I live another 10 years or another 20 years, I am not going to hide from this anymore.
And that was the end of our interview here on the Skookum Report with Mr. Rick Cox. If anybody has any questions for Rick, shoot me an email at skookumreport@gmail.com, or you can put your question in the comment section down below, and I'll make sure he gets those. He said if we get enough, he'll come back on the show and we'll do a question and answer session with him, and that'd be really cool. I enjoyed talking with this gentleman. He knows a lot about the topic. If you or anybody you know has had a Bigfoot encounter or a sighting, and you'd like to have it here on the show, shoot me an email at skookumreport@gmail.com, and I'll be sure to get it up on the channel for you, no problem at all. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment and say hi. I enjoy chatting with you guys. So until next time on the Skookum Report, y'all take care and God bless. Thanks so much.